What's the biggest double standard in society? To me, there seems to be an acceptable double standard whereby men who make comment and women who have smaller melons or less voluptuous body features are, rightly, viewed as disgusting, misogynistic, judgmental, superficial, and cruel schmucks. But in Western cultures, at least, it seems like it's still fair game for women. And as a non-straight man myself, to, in a very superficial, judgmental, and cruel way, a misandrist in the female case, misandry being the female version of misogynist, joke or ridicule or reject or make fun of men with small and even average-sized thing. I actually know several women and non-straight men who flat out state that they are size queens, as though using that term somehow normalizes and makes acceptable their act of judging and discriminating against men who are small to average in size, down there. And probing via conversation with people like this, whereby I've asked them, don't you think that those comments you make are as cruel and superficial as when hetero men or lesbian women judge women for their body? I've been shocked by some comments, with several responding with comments like, no, it's different because a thing needs to serve a function of satisfying me, and if it's too small, I don't want it, because it won't satisfy me. As though making jokes and rejecting men based on size is somehow strictly a utilitarian preference as opposed to being superficial and misandrist. One thing men are lucky for, I guess, is, unlike women's sizes, which are easy to observe and judge upon even when fully clothed, with men we can hide our thing size with clothing whilst on the street so people never truly know what we're packing and can't judge us on the street for that. Well, outside of gray sweatpants, which can bring its own, I always say, transparency to the streetscape. Also helps that some men are growers, not showers, and the superficial judgment is actually made upon the full size. There's further mystery about how big a man actually is because on the street, people can never really know their true size because they haven't seen it in full mast. But many women and gay men do talk and gossip, and if a man happens to have a thing size in the spectral ends of the bell curve, excuse the reference, jokes, it becomes spread about them in certain circles anyway. It is still seemingly socially acceptable for women to ridicule men who aren't six-pack abs, super muscly biceps or triceps, and really just have average, or heaven forbid, fatter bodies. This is changing a bit, and there's in recent years a big excitability towards dad bods as though this solves everything. But it's almost as though when a woman or a non-straight man proudly states, I love me a dad bod, that this is intended as an act of defiance or something outside the norm. The norm or acceptable standard being, of course, six-pack abs and biceps of steel. I think we should all just embrace our imperfections. After all, isn't that what makes us unique? Story 2. Pretty or skinny privilege. Especially when it comes to women, pretty and thin women are generally treated so much nicer than those who lack one or either of those. After I cut my hair short, I was shocked by how rude men especially, but surprisingly also women, became towards me. No more friendly, polite smiles, no more holding the door open when I have my hands full with bags, no more friendly chatter waiting for the elevator, just formality. Thin women or girls in friend groups are even picked out as the only complimentary object in gatherings. It was not too long ago when I was out shopping for jeans, so I went into this outlet store that had huge sales on high-quality garments. And there was this group of girls, teenagers, who were shopping together and trying on clothes, the usual. The problem was, as I have sadly seen many times before, the clerk only complimented the thinnest girl on how the clothes looked on her. She just ignored the other girls or gave some lighthearted comments here and there. It was so frustrating to watch, and it probably did nothing to those other girls' self-esteem. Like, you're a 50-ish-year-old woman and those girls are probably like 14. Have some damn self-awareness. People also generally don't comment on the food choices of thin people, but they love to give offhanded comments and advice to bigger or overweight people, as if they're children unable to make choices for themselves. The thing about pretty or skinny privilege is that people address it online, but never in real life, and especially not when they witness or experience it firsthand. It's just that elephant in the room everyone is aware of, but never comments on. Story 3. Men being mistreated or made to feel uncomfortable, physically, emotionally, etc. Men can be victims in a society where they're supposed to be powerful and dominant. That being said, it seems few women these days entertain or appreciate masculinity. So the more men become gentle and docile to attract women, they can more easily fall victim to being mistreated, etc. The real problem is it's right in front of us and nobody takes it seriously. Jimmy Bennett and Johnny Depp are examples of men being taken advantage of by women, and look what happened there. So everyone is giving me nonsense about Johnny Depp. All I know about that case is what I read about it. I wasn't present in the courtroom, but I was present for the allegations Amber Heard had made and everyone calling me a misogynist for saying we should wait for more evidence. Then look at what happened. Someone commented that an ex-wife has nothing to do with another wife when it comes to cruelty. That's funny because Johnny Depp's ex-wife served as a character witness during that trial. Secondly, nobody said anything about Jimmy Bennett. Does anybody know about that case? How Asia Argentino publicly called out Harvey Weinstein at an award show because of his disgusting allegations? What happened to her? Oh, during the investigation against Weinstein, it was discovered that she had been mistreated by her co-star and tried to blame it on him. We know what happened to Depp, Heard, and of course Weinstein. What happened to Asia Argento and Jimmy Bennett's case? Woman wanted Weinstein's head in a platter, but Rose McGowan, who also called out Weinstein and filmed content together about men mistreating women, only for McGowan to say that the penal system should handle Argento. She wanted a man to be burned at the stake, but a woman should stand trial. Interesting, to say the least. Story 4. The difference between how overweight men and women are treated. Overweight women are always told they're beautiful no matter what, celebrated in the media and encouraged to embrace their size. Overweight men, on the other hand, are ridiculed by everyone. Called fat and ugly, and overweight characters in TV shows and movies are always the center of the jokes. I can't remember the last time I ever saw an overweight man get told he's handsome the way he is. A great example is garments modeling. Women's garments are now shown by models of every size, from healthy weight right up until borderline obese. I've never seen male garments be modeled by any guy who wasn't absolutely jacked, hairless, and in the top 1% of attractiveness. Story 5. I saw a post in a Facebook group I'm in recently. It was a selfie of a mother with her little boy in the backseat eating a pudding cup, and she had captioned it, "Making sure he's making his future girlfriends happy," or something along those lines. I was disgusted by it. My boyfriend laughed. He tried to tell me I was being stuck up and a prude about it. I asked him if I was a father posting a picture of his daughter eating a popsicle and captioned it similar to making future boyfriends happy. Would you feel the same way? It looked like I slapped him in the face, but he instantly got what I was saying. Categorizing children in any capacity is gross as hell, and it even happens to little boys. People just need to do better and let kids simply be kids without putting intimate undertones to it. So freaking weird. It's like those parents who dress their toddlers. Just let the kids be kids, people. Story 6. People are encouraged to reach out and ask for help when they're struggling with mental health, but still stigmatized if they have mental illness. I would say people are encouraged to reach out for help, but most mental health services are sorely lacking. In college, I remember all these materials encouraging students to access counseling services if needed. I tried to do so, half a dozen times, and the wait list, the hoops you have to jump through, etc., just made the whole process disheartening and stifling, and eventually, I just gave up. I was trying to help an acquaintance of mine who is poor and has a lot of mental health issues. I tried reaching out on her behalf to a lot of the services that promote themselves as being available for her demographic. In the end, it all fell through in a way pretty similar to my other experience above. In a progressive city like mine, there are tons of flyers you see around town, in buses, the local media, outed by government officials, for mental health and other social services that make it seem like all you have to do is reach out and ask. From my experience, these services are usually a complete train wreck, and actually being able to access them is near impossible. I've worked in social work, so I've tried to hook people up with these things a lot. Story 7. I solely raised my daughter as a single father from the time she was a year old until she was almost 6 when I married my wife. The number of people who have asked about my daughter's mother just to reply with, "Oh, she must have had PPD," or "There must be a mental illness involved," or "Maybe she will come around in a few years," is absolutely staggering. Like, no man, she just decided she wanted to go to a party instead of being a mom to her child. No child support, no financial or emotional contribution, nothing. Hell, I can even get a copy of my daughter's health insurance card when her old one expired because I wasn't on the paperwork, despite the fact that I was the one who filled out the paperwork for it at the hospital the day after she was born. It's infuriating, knowing full well that had the roles been reversed and I'd have been the one to leave, I'd 100% instantly be considered a useless father. Story 8. Responses to pestering in general are just all over the place. We know it's bad, we don't want it to happen, but just roll over and accept it as inevitable. I really think a lot of focus needs to be placed on zero-tolerance policies because they're just dumb. How do you stop an oppressor? Punch them is one of the go-to responses. It won't stop until you stand up to them. It's somewhat accurate, but it creates a feedback loop. Violence is the only answer. It's just a matter of who's perpetrating it. So the bully is violent towards the victim, but If the victim responds or defends themselves, then both parties are punished. If the victim doesn't respond, then they're just a victim and will continue to be a victim. Well, then guess there's no solution. Might as well hand everyone a pair of boxing gloves when they're born. Or, and this is just spitballing, we look at the root cause of the pestering. Research has shown that kids who bully generally come from problematic households. They are generally seeking attention, and violence gets them that attention. Hurt people hurt people. Those problematic households generally have one thing in common: poverty. How about we fix the social safety nets and allow all kids to grow up in stable, loving homes? Eliminate disparity, and you eliminate a lot of problems that disparity creates. Story 9. People with low-functioning special needs tend to receive more patience, compassion, and understanding than the average high-functioning autistic. My brother is autistic and will most likely need round-the-clock care the rest of his life. Even some of the nastiest people in my family are kind to him. I've met a handful of autistic people who can work and go to school. They tend to get pestered or straight up shunned because they're odd to other people or sound very robotic. One coworker at a call center I had worked at a few years back was not liked by our team, even our supervisor. He invited us to his lavish apartment in the rich part of town that he somehow afforded in a salary for a housewarming party. I don't know why he chose a luxury apartment, and I wondered if it was a status move on his part. Only me, my now boyfriend, and a girl on our team who had gold digger Instagram model vibes came. When he spoke in a group or to me in conversation, he seemed stiff or tense to me. Not weird. Spoke a bit slowly, like he was choosing his words as he spoke in real time. When he got fired for not following instruction multiple times in his calls, it was a shame, because he made good sales. Another woman on our team revealed to us in a huddle that he told her he was autistic. There was not much care for that fact because he was seen as irresponsible for his housing choices and moving states just to pursue his dream of being a DJ. It clicked for me, at that moment, why he was considered strange. He was probably proficient enough to get a job and speak, but did not have all the social tools and likely compensated with masking. I was surprised I didn't realize the signs because I have a nonverbal sibling. Every time I met or befriended someone who was high-functioning, I never realized until they revealed it. Some were well-adjusted and some rubbed me the wrong way. Story 10. The double standard between women, especially teenage girls, being fans of things and men being fans of things. It's deemed as somewhat normal and almost to be expected that men go absolutely mental over sport, especially things like football, to the point that when there are football games on, the local police are usually on standby to deal with the riots and fights that usually happen, and that's just kind of seen as part of it, and to be expected, and it's just people being passionate. On the other hand, if you get a group of teenage girls getting a bit excited over something like, I don't know, a BTS concert or a Taylor Swift show or something, suddenly that's deemed weird and stupid and they get dragged for it. It's literally the same thing. The latter is also far less disruptive, yet is the thing that is always demonized. It's not a new thing either. It goes back as far as the Beatles and Elvis, where it was just passed off as ridiculous hysteria. Meanwhile, you've got a Brexit geezer going absolutely feral because Manchester United lost. Low-key angers me off a lot that anything women and teenage girls like is demonized, yet things like sport get a free pass. I'm pretty sure the collective screaming of 50,000 teenage girls at a Taylor Swift concert is less destructive than a single misplaced pass during a football match. Story 11. Today I met a Spanish couple living in Germany for 14 years. They were on a train that was supposed to go to the airport, but suddenly changed plans due to early arrival. This was announced. They didn't understand because they spoke no German. They didn't understand what was about to happen, but they realized that something was wrong, so they decided to approach me and ask for help. The woman was dictating the question to her phone in Spanish, but I speak Spanish, so I understood and immediately answered her question. Turned out we were all heading to the airport and were soon about to take the same flight to Spain, so we sat together and started chatting. It was a nice chat until we started talking about recent protests against tourists and foreigners in Spain. At this point, you've probably guessed it, but they were unhappy with foreigners that didn't speak Spanish but lived in Spain. When I started asking uncomfortable questions, they came up with thousands of excuses and insisted it wasn't the same thing. You have kids who speak German and do everything for us. German is harder than Spanish. Germans are impatient with foreigners learning the language and so on. P.S. I'm neither German nor Spanish. I was just a neutral referee trying to make sense of their position. The fact is that the absolute majority of people who discriminate against foreigners based on language would also be unable to learn a language as adults if lived in another country. But this discrimination is perfectly normalized here in Europe. Story 12. Mistreatment in the workplace is a very big one that I've seen firsthand on several occasions. I work in an OR, and the amount of times the female nurses will openly do something with the men or make comments toward doctors is astounding. I'm not talking about simple remarks. I mean things like, I'm just saying, I know you're married, but if you want to just sleep together later, tell your wife you're on call and we can go to my place. Being 100% serious. It got so bad between one male nurse and a female tech who was obsessed with him that he actually requested not to be put in an OR with her again. Our director laughed it off as, oh, that's just so-and-so. However, another instance was this older male nurse who mentioned one day he liked a new female tech's hair color, and she immediately reported him to our director and stated he made her feel uncomfortable. He was immediately taken out of her room and now can't even work the same days as her. So yeah, men do it. It's horrific. Women do it and it's funny. Story 13. Here's one that always angers me off. Mental health awareness and personal hygiene. People will say stuff like, reach out to friends who might be depressed. But I told a friend that I had been struggling to brush my teeth regularly because of a mental health spiral and they went, ew, really? In general, people seem shocked when someone mentions that personal hygiene takes effort plus energy you might not be able to expend while experiencing the complete disillusion of the soul. Oh, so people struggle to shower regularly when depressed? Yeah, Karen. People will literally end themselves when they're too depressed. Irregular hygiene, while not ideal, isn't that unlikely. Story 14. People having faith in spiritual beliefs being stigmatized and subjugated, while people having faith in scientific beliefs is exalted and sanctified. Both are predicated upon faith, belief in that which we cannot prove with certitude. Science is inherently probabilistic and involves biases all throughout that we like to pretend aren't in play, as if science is the objective arbiter of the truth and whatever science says, so it is. Science is meaningless without our speculation and interpretation as to what it means. There's so many assumptions, beliefs predicated upon faith that underlie the scientific method, without which it makes no sense, becoming utterly nonsensical. Not to mention that the theoretical protocols related to doing science properly are regularly wantonly disregarded, rendering the whole enterprise empirically flawed. Last but not least, there are myriad ulterior motives that deliberately distort the research, e.g. p-hacking for narcissistic self-adulation and or for greedily acting at the behest of various powers that bewitch have hijacked many of the individuals and institutions that constitute the scientific enterprise so as to manipulate the public psyche into thinking particular ways as a means of attaining and maintaining power, oftentimes through the medium of making more money and keeping people in check, forcing them to stay in their lanes, to mind their own business, to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Story 15. Claiming to be pro-life and insisting all life is equally important, but you're 100% okay with forcing women to suffer through pregnancies that compromise their health and the baby's health. Bonus points when the baby is an unviable pregnancy or a stillborn, and you're still okay with forcing a woman to carry to full term. Doctors recommending a termination to save a woman's life. The baby's likely going to pass away if not already passed. Giving birth could end her. And someone who claims to be pro-life is asking, what about the baby? Double bonus points to the pro-life who want to swoop in and claim this never happens when they know it does happen. And ever since RVW was overturned, it's been an issue. Story 16. A couple years ago, I told a story on Reddit about this girl giving me a whistle, and every time I was getting close, she would scrape it with her teeth. I told her the first 3 times to stop doing that. She didn't. I got so mad that I put my clothes on and left her apartment. Despite explaining clearly that she did it on purpose and that I had told her that was painful, that post went into more detail. I still got downvoted to oblivion. Called a bunch of insulting things and got told stupid stuff like I hurt her feelings because she was probably inexperienced and didn't know what she was doing. Imagine what the reaction would be if it was a girl saying how the sky kept biting hard into her despite her telling him a few times to stop. Story 17. The women are socially responsible for everyone's intimate health. And I don't just mean shouldering the burden of birth control, although that's part of it. Most women also get an intimate health exam annually, which includes getting an STD panel if they are active. How many men do you know who get regular STD screening? You can thank the women for everyone not all walking around with syphilis or HPV. Speaking of HPV, it's also standard for women to get Gardasil, which is the HPV medicine. I have a friend who is male who recognizes the double standard, and he asked his doctor if he can get the Gardasil medicine course also. The doctor was initially baffled because men just aren't expected to get it, and even started arguing with him about it until the doctor had to wait a second, realizing himself that there's just no reason why men cannot or should not get the medicine either, and agreed to give it to him. Men are just as capable of contracting HPV as women. Most women who contract it, it's because they got it from a male partner. Medicine is just as effective in men as it is in women. The only difference is that men will at worst get warts from HPV, while women will at worst pass away from cervical cancer. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 18. This is a gender double standard that I've seen in movies. It's where the moral of the story for the female protagonist is that the popular handsome guy that you think you like is not actually the guy for you. It was your male best friend that has been fawning over you for ages and would do anything for you that was the right guy for you all along. It's a good message that we should be deconstructing beauty standards, but I've almost never seen this applied to films with a male protagonist. The male protagonist always performs some tasks to get the girl of their dreams rather than realizing that their desire was just vanity, and beauty was in front of them the whole time. For the life of me, I cannot remember a single film where they try to deconstruct beauty standards in this way with a male protagonist, except for Shark Tale. Freaking Shark Tale. Story 19. That it is common knowledge that mental illness is the cause of the worst types of violent crime. Everyone is aware that perpetrators are almost always charged, tried, convicted, and sentenced as competent. Not only does this not make any sense, but it's a huge loss to society as these types of mental illnesses need to be studied relentlessly in controlled scientific conditions. The desire for revenge still outweighs the desire for prevention, early detection, or prediction. It's backwards. And another thing, the people who wage the worst crimes, the ones who end up by the thousands in the name of resources, who are billionaires through the use of slaves, sweatshop, or child labor, those who literally are destroying the actual planet. Not euphemism, literally, are the elite and socially considered inviolable. What the actual heck is wrong with this place? Story 20. I'm a woman and I really can't stand the way other women put down their boyfriends or husbands or significant others or male jokingly as if it's normal. Women will act like their needs are paramount, roll their eyes to each other laughingly when their husbands or boyfriends say something they consider ridiculous. I just think it's rude. If you love someone, don't pull any of that condescending crap. The saddest part is that we've made it so normal that men think women are supposed to act like this and that being in a relationship means they will always be the center of the joke, and that's the way it goes. I hate that crap. I expect more of my fellow women and more of the men who are putting up with being regularly crapped on by the person who supposedly loves them. Story 21. People are happy to pay lip service to teachers. I'm talking preschool too. But when it comes to putting their money where their mouth is, that's when people turn and start calling teachers incompetent. The economy can't function without teachers. We saw this during the lockdown. When schools closed or stayed closed, everyone was impacted. People with children had to stay home from work or find someone to provide childcare, and people without children were forced to pick up the slack, assuming there was no work from home option for either party. So many people came out making TikToks and memes talking about how teachers were angels, deserved to be paid $1 million, etc. During the 2020 school year, no teachers I know got raises, and any raises seen since then are pretty scant. Teachers get blamed for the loss caused by virtual learning, but it was really the best thing anyone could do at the time. I got one of the most insulting emails I've ever received from a parent that was in response to a simple state of the classroom email I sent before the winter break. It was obvious that not only did the sender not closely read what I wrote, but also was threatening to go over my head to tell my principal. But I'm not sure because I CC admin in every email. This person's main complaint was the student only had a B in the class. The student had a failing test average. Should have been thankful for that B. Story 22. This just really comes down to how you define racism. If you just define it as simple prejudice, then yes, people can dislike white people or hate white people or be prejudiced against white people. This is your definition, then yes, surely people can be prejudiced against white people. But it's important to remember that white isn't actually like an official race. It is a hodgepodge of Western society that happens to have white pale skin. But white is not an ethnicity, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. And some people would define racism as being a combination of race and power. Racism entails having unequal power dynamics. Black people have never been in a position to subjugate white people in the United States of America. Certainly not systematically. Certainly not literally in the form of chattel slavery, depriving them of generations of inheritances and familial relations. Honestly, do people really get canceled these days? Andrew Tate is worth $100 million or something. Joe Rogan said crazy prejudice crap and he just got like a $200 extension from Spotify. Look, he apologized for it and it happened a long time ago. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a platform. But the point is, he wasn't canceled because he makes money for Spotify and Steven Crowder is rich despite all the prejudiced stuff he says. Prejudiced people thrive all the time in this country. Almost nobody gets deplatformed. That's what cancellation is. Like Louis C.K. was canceled. He genuinely lost like $100 million worth of movie deals and was deplatformed at almost every place he worked. You could even argue Alex Jones, but ain't nothing extreme case where he literally defamed someone's family. And even then, he's still been invited on Spotify, the largest musical media company in the world. Story 23. In the animated series Central Park, the main husband and wife are black and white respectively. They therefore have two mixed children, one voiced by Titus Burgess and the other was voiced by Kristen Bell. Neither of these actors are mixed. One is black and one is white, respectively. 3 or 4 years back when there was the great voice acting purge when it was suddenly decided that people can voice act for characters outside of their own race. This is why characters like Carl and Dr. Hibbert in The Simpsons suddenly sounded glaringly different, or why Cleveland and Family Guy got a new voice actor. Though he sounds so similar you may have never noticed. Kristen Bell was essentially forced to step down from the role and be replaced. She would be given a new character for the series a season later, so she wasn't fired, at least. Titus meanwhile kept his role. It's a double standard that Kristen was pressured to leave the role while Titus's role was never in question, when neither of them understand what it means to be mixed. In fact, both of them have as equal of a claim to be playing such a 50-50 mixed character, when each actor is 100% one of those 50% backgrounds and upbringings. Story 24. Female tennis players demand equal pay for unequal work. Shorter matches, fewer sets. Meanwhile, male models are dramatically underpaid compared to female models for literally the same work. Women fight for bodily autonomy, equals the right to have a termination, thinking that without it, they're unequal to men. In fact, at no point in American history have men ever had bodily autonomy, including now in 2024. Men are still routinely, legally, forced to undergo cosmetic surgery in their genitals during infancy, something that women are legally protected from. Also, men have to sell their souls to the American government in the form of registering for the Selective Service in order to gain many of the rights women have automatically, without having to earn in any way. Men are quite literally second-class citizens in the United States. Yet all we ever hear about is feminism and how women need equal rights. In fact, women already have more rights than men do. In order for women to have equal rights with men, we would need to take some of women's rights away. Story 25. Even if they're not the most popular, most people generally understand that not every Christian follows the word of their Bible to a T and have room for variation in their beliefs. Almost nobody is shocked if a Christian has intimacy before marriage anymore. Islam, on the other hand, is not allowed such benefit of the doubt. This is because of the Western propaganda that followed, making the public believe that the beliefs are approximately the same as those of the average Muslim, with the exception of the violence. People don't realize how many Muslims leave their home countries precisely because of the religious leaders there are too extreme. Go talk to them. They're nice people, not as uptight as you might think. A lot of them are just scared to mingle with non-Muslims because they're afraid of the violence and discrimination that could, and does, get directed at them. Don't reply to me with excerpts from the Quran because that's exactly what my point was about. Christians get to omit or reinterpret certain aspects of the Bible that they dislike, while Muslims are held to every syllable of the Quran, with no room to deviate from it. By the way, notice how I'm not endorsing either of these religions? I don't believe in either of them. But it's messed up how disparately each is treated regardless of how the individuals in question conduct themselves. Story 26. Male nurses are often requested to leave the examination room when sensible parts of a female are going to be exposed in front of a female doctor, sometimes without giving us the chance of leaving without request and saying, "If you need my help, I'll be in the next room." I've been a registered nurse for the last 30 years and never heard or seen or been told of a female nurse requested to leave when a male zones are going to be exposed in front of a male doctor. We are all professional caregivers, but it seems like men's looks are always dirty look and women's looks are always chaste and pure. If you hear the comments between female nurses, you can easily notice that their look is far from chaste and pure. But I'm still the one requested to leave. By the way, as a male patient, I'm not always comfortable being examined in front of a woman, but I assume they're professional caregivers with no other interest in my well-being. Story 27. I'm a male in a relationship with a narcissistic woman who can be extremely emotionally cruel and will hold over my head her power over me and everything I've built up until this point, and twist it to look like I'm the horrible stereotypical male who doesn't deserve respect or understanding. This is in no way meant to diminish women who go through emotional or physical mistreatment, but to note that we're stuck too when it happens even if it seems less common. We're suffering together, just that people are so stuck in the either or thinking that we're here, with a stigma that says that men are the cause, women are the victims, so men can't be mistreated. In reality, the most victims are those that are lesbian and mistreated by their partner. It's not about gender. It's about how people behave. Here I am, expected to be okay every day, when everything I do and try to build is based on appeasing her enough to be able to keep going in life. Story 28.
In a movie, if there was a male character who was making fun of the small melons of women, then most of the mainstream media would be outraged. Rightly so. But for some stupid reason, men with small things are still mocked on TV shows and in other forms of entertainment, even though it's just the same issue as small melons, which are both things that come out of genetic luck. People are born that way. It's not right to body shame. Women with small melons are never made fun of, yet men with small things have a category that makes fun of them in a way. Also, you still see a lot of women with small melons in videos, even though many men prefer big ones. Heck, the number one in the world had small melons. But you hardly see videos which show men with small things, even though it is supposed to be progressive and inclusive if it wants to stay relevant to modern times. I think small, medium, big melons are all fine. I think small, medium, and big things are all fine. This body shaming has to stop. It's not fair on those men who have small things. The double standard has to stop. Body shaming is wrong in all its forms. Story 29. Vilifying an entire race and gender. You can be prejudiced to white people, especially white men, but it cannot be the opposite. Black people can openly say, I don't like white people, and it's acceptable. A white person cannot say that about their own race without termination from their job, being deplatformed and deemed a racist. I think both of these attitudes towards one another are disgusting. I don't feel that way about a race. It's bothersome that someone would judge me just because of my skin color, too. Progress in race issues begins when everyone has the same social behaviors and mutual respect, not when one gets a special license to be hateful and the other is supposed to put up with it. Most things deemed prejudiced are not about race anyway. It's tribalism, a very natural thing for all of us. People with cultural similarities will always predominantly flock together. Race is the first and most obvious commonality that makes a group of people flock together. In a diverse room, Christians will naturally flock together, blacks will flock together, and so on. Everyone, without exception or even admission, is most comfortable with people that are most like them, from physical appearance to politics, interests, and beliefs. There's countless studies on it. Instead of understanding and respecting the human condition, we normalize blaming and vilifying white people because they are the majority in the proverbial room. Story 30. I feel like connecting with culture is seen very differently. I grew up in China, but I'm white, so when I moved back to America and talked about Chinese culture with people, I was often met with some degree of hostility, like I was imposing on something that didn't belong to me. At the same time, I don't necessarily feel a deep connection with cultures that would be considered mine, like Swedish, German, or Midwestern, where my ancestors were from and where my extended family lives. I think they're very interesting and I love hearing about them, but I don't feel like I associate with them because I didn't grow up around them. At the same time, I've met someone who were third or greater generation, born and raised in America, who can associate with their ancestral culture even if they hadn't grown up knowing about it or celebrating it. I'm not trying to say they shouldn't be allowed to connect with whatever culture they want to, but it seems unfair that I can't. The only people aside from family members who have no problem with me associating with the culture I grew up in are my really good friends. Story 31. There are tons of double standards when it comes to appearance. Fat shaming, skinny shaming, etc. They are rather complex, but I'm not trying to both sides of the issue. One thing that annoyed me in particular is how attractiveness is linked to hobbies. In my case, video games. Being a fat, balding guy, the video games were apparently the source of all my health issues. Talking enthusiastically about video games was met with awkwardness at best and scorn at worst. You should have more active hobbies. Playing video games is not healthy. You should get your eyes checked. It's not healthy for your posture. You should socialize more. Spend more time outside. Being fit goth femme. The video games hobby is suddenly so quirky. It's on par with drawing, singing, literature, or theater. Gone are all the unsolicited health comments. I've had friends randomly give me games in no particular occasion. Family no longer tells me to spend more time outside or socialize more. I can join in hobby conversations at work without the awkwardness. Story 32. High standards in relationships. I feel like men don't seem to care much about height. Meanwhile, a lot of girls have a requirement that their partner has to be the taller one or even meet a minimum height. For the record, I'm aware this is totally nitpicking considering the amount of pressure society puts on women to look and act a certain way, but it's something I've noticed. Tall girl, hot as hell. Short girl, hot as hell. Girl's the same height as the guy, hot as hell. Tall guy, hot as hell. Guy the same height as the girl. Some girls might object, but still generally not too frowned upon. Short guy? Oh no, he's too short for me. No hobbits. Also, I feel like the whole "it goes back to our primal days" argument is BS. You could say the same about physically fighting for food. Even if it does go back to our ancestors, it's 2024. So we're not as archaic that we should fall victim to the instincts of our ancestors. Story 33. I think for every single one of us, we have witnessed some sort of double standard and likely lived it in some way. This covers every question too. Who, what, when, where, and why. I'm sure if you rephrase this question as who, what, when, and where, and why you have personally witnessed or dealt with a double standard, we may get genuine, real personal answers. We don't need secondary or tertiary opinions in this question, but that seems to be the majority of the answers. It has to be truly personal for this question to actually really matter. Your standard and mine are different. For example, some might ask, why is beef readily available in India, but pork is almost completely unavailable in Pakistan? This is a double standard by definition, yet it is a double standard set by others. We all see double standards every day. Some matter more than others. On top of that, for those we love, we let certain things slide. For example, one of my good friends is completely anti-smoking and loves the gym life, but he fell in love with a girl who loves to smoke. I suppose in this scenario, he is double standards with himself. Very interesting question. Story 34. I broke my neck in Florida for someone's negligence. I had 2 prior fines in the same job site for the same thing before my company was on site. Being the owner, I exempted out of workman's comp. Because I was covered medically and Florida is only medical comp. Anyway, legislature and the other Bush jab have something in place that is a life changer for the bad. Horizontal immunity means basically a contractor cannot sue another contractor for injury that is caused from the other negligence. This was 2008. My worker who received stitches 100 or more received $160K in 6 months for a cut. Took me 5 years, and I received less than him. They were looking for the case to get the outdated legislature changed, but I had to pull out of Florida and went to SC. It was cheap, but I tried to apply for assistance, but it didn't qualify for food stamps either because I made too much that year and I was too injured to work. So I applied for temporary disability and I denied for that because I wasn't waiting for reconstructive surgery for my neck. So they couldn't get a dollar amount that matched my injury because the extent of it wouldn't be known until I was completely through with my physical therapy. And then my doctor was to evaluate my injury, and then I was to see what a doctor in their payroll says. Story 35. Men's looks. I think men have it either easy or rough, and it's based almost entirely on luck. Men are measured in things that can't change: height, male pattern baldness, eye color, hair color, size. Oftentimes, women in the office openly joke or make fun of these things. However, if you hint at the facts that Jessica is 35, overweight, doesn't have a good job, it's like you just committed war crimes. Obviously, it's not all the time, and guys can be pretty terrible. But that is really put in its place while the opposite continues and is even supported in some social circles. I don't know. I think men just have a lot of things that make it hard for them that are allowed to worsen, while a disparate treatment for similar things or even less serious things is unacceptable. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.